Welcome to Total Retail Talks, your podcast channel for retail knowledge.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Total Retail Talks. We're recording this episode live at the National Retail Federation Big Show in New York City. I am joined by Ken Natori, the president of the Natori Company. Ken just spoke here at the event with Big Commerce and talked a little bit about the Natori Company's growing direct-to-consumer business. We're going to have some questions about that presentation and get to know Ken and the business a little bit better. So thanks for joining me, Ken.
Thanks a lot for having me, Joe.
So to get our started, why don't you briefly tell our audience a little bit about your professional background and your current role as president at the Natori Company, and then kind of a follow-up there, tell our audience a little bit about the Natori Company for those that might not be familiar with the business.
Sure, great. So thanks again for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. So Natori, we are a fashion company. It's a family business. We're entering our 45th year, which we're very excited about. We're probably most known in the marketplace for high-end women's sleepwear and bras and underwear, but we've really been trying to take that brand equity and become a lifestyle brand. So in the past years, we've developed clothing collections. We just went into men's. We do home textiles. We have partnerships in shoes, legwear, and a number of different categories as well. So really trying to become a lifestyle brand. In terms of the company and my role, my mother actually founded the business 45 years ago. She left a career on Wall Street and just kind of wanted to do something different. I joined the business 15 years ago. Initially, I was a TV and radio reporter at Bloomberg, went to business school, and then went on Wall Street, sort of followed my parents' footsteps there. And then it wasn't until 2007 that I decided it was kind of time to join the business and help out with it.
Great. That provides a really nice background for our audiences as they're listening here. I mentioned you spoke here on a panel at NRF, and kind of a main focus of the presentation or the session was around Natori Company's transformation from really primarily a wholesale business to more of also a direct-to-consumer brand as well. You talked a little bit about the product there. Let's talk a little bit about distribution of that product and the channels that you're selling in. So tell us a little bit about kind of the impetus for that shift to being more direct-to-consumer focused. And a little bit about the internal workings, internal steps to kind of get you going in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. That's been a major change for the company. So, when I joined the business in 2007, our business model was relatively simple. We cared a lot about designing this great fashion product, and we really distributed it almost exclusively to high-end retailers. So our distribution was through Neiman Marcus, Saks, Nordstrom, Bloomingdale's, really just a small number of high-end department stores. So, I joined in 2007, and there were a number of kind of warning signs in the tea leaves about staying with that business model and not being open-minded to other ways to distribute. We had seen prior to that customers were incredibly loyal. So the same customer would only go to Neiman Marcus, for example, and say, I'm going to buy my shoes, my dresses, my sleepwear, my bras and underwear here. That's where I shop, and oftentimes these are the brands I buy there. What we saw in 2007, really throughout the 2000s, was that loyalty, whether it was to brand or whether it was to retailer, really started to dissipate some. So it wasn't at that point, it suddenly all of a sudden, it wasn't uncommon for a customer to buy a dress at Neiman Marcus, but then say buy something else at TJ Maxx or Costco. That was becoming much more common. So we really said, okay, a couple things. One is we have to do a better job of making sure our product is where people shop in stores, right? And so we developed other brands to attack different retailers that we hadn't distributed to previously. But then also we obviously saw, we knew e-commerce was coming. How fast it was going to come, how fast that transition would be, we weren't totally sure, but we knew we wanted to be ahead of the game as opposed to behind the game. So that all coincided with my joining the company, which turned out to be fortuitous because that really kind of became kind of my project soon after I joined the company in 2007.
So as you talk about the opportunity, you saw this coming, you wanted to be there and your product to be there where your consumers preferred to shop and where they were showing up. E-commerce, this direct-to-consumer opportunity presented itself. Obviously, with that great opportunity, there's obviously some, I would imagine, speed bumps and challenges that you have to work out in order to get fully operational, thinking about things like, supply chain and getting, your product out to your customers, and some of these things, just the e-commerce platform itself, and building an e-commerce experience that customers, not only will they come for the first time, but they're going to want to come back and shop again. You mentioned the loyalty of your customers. So talk a little bit about kind of, as you started in this D2C journey, some of the challenges that presented themselves and kind of how you're working through them.
So one of the benefits of the way we did it was that we didn't have to make a big splash out of the gate. In fact, we didn't want to make a big splash out of the gate. So one of our concerns about launching a direct-to-consumer business was, in essence, by doing so, we'd be kind of competing with some of the stores that we sold product to. And as I mentioned, there were only a small number of stores we were selling to. If one of those said, hey, wait, you're competing with us by building Natori.com, we're going to cut back your orders and give them to somebody else who's not competing with us. Like, that was a major concern. So we, instead of, launching a website with bells and whistles and a lot of press, we were like, all right, let's just get this thing out there. Let's see what happens. Let's obviously make sure that we can execute transactions and successfully ship product, but let's not market it a ton. Let's not make, a big production out of it. So that actually helped us, because we didn't, we could kind of do it quietly at first and then take our learnings from there. So it wasn't like we came out of the gate with all of this online marketing and all of this capability to do 9 million different things. It was, trust me, it was a production to get it up there, but we didn't have to go all out right away. So that did kind of help. As the business progressed, as the stores maybe protested a little, but at the end of the day, it didn't hurt our wholesale business. Then we started every year sort of adding and adding and adding. And that sort of led to where the site is today, where we feel like, we go up against stores and retailers with much bigger teams, much bigger budgets, but we feel like, we carry our weight in terms of making sure that, we feel that anyone who wants to buy Natori product, the best place to do it is Natori.com, because we're the only place where you can get the full suite of Natori products across, all of the different product categories we do. And there's much more of the feel. For us, the site, it's not just about transacting and showing product. We're very proud of the fact that we're an independent business where, the owner-operators are very involved in everything we do. And our customers kind of appreciate hearing about, the people at the company, our employees, my mother and I, the fact that we have our own factory in the Philippines, company owned since the company started, where, we make a lot of our sleepwear and ready to wear. So being able to storytell, that's been a key part of having our e-commerce as well.
And you actually addressed a couple of follow-ups that I wanted to touch on. So the full product catalog available on Natori.com might not be in some of the wholesale partners. So that's one advantage of getting more customers to your D2C site. The follow-up was the relationships with existing wholesale partners. You said you didn't want to kind of make a big splash because you had those existing relationships. You didn't want them to cut back on on their orders from your business. Did you compete on price? How did you handle that? What were some of and do those relationships still exist today? And kind of how does wholesale fit into the mix now?
Wholesale is still very important to us. And, as well as our website's done, wholesale will always be a very important part of our business, and our wholesale partners will always be very important partners to us. I think, as long as we're not competing on price, right, we will never say, hey, Saks, you sell this for $300 and we're going to sell it on Natori for, $270. Like, that's never going to happen. And of course, we wouldn't want to do that. We want price consistency across all of our partners, including Natori.com. And so that is really your answer in terms of, like, how did we grow this e-commerce business without sacrificing or jeopardizing our wholesale relationships? And the answer is really through price. We always tell our customer service team we want them to be agnostic in terms of where a sale happens. Obviously, we'd prefer for something to be sold on Natori.com, but if a customer is looking for a certain item that we're out of stock on, they're encouraged to say, hey, you know who has this? Go to Nordstrom.com. You can buy this here. Or this Bloomingdale's near where you live has this product, so go buy it there. So, we obviously, the success of Natori.com is very important, but the success of all of our wholesale partners is very important as well.
So let's talk about, you mentioned kind of every year you're gaining momentum in the D2C channel, and more and more consumers are coming to Natori.com to shop. Talk a little bit then in terms of the experience on that site. We just mentioned that you work with BigCommerce. Tell us a little bit about that relationship and how the BigCommerce platform has helped you to develop an online shopping experience that your customers enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. So, most fashion I'd say this about our company years ago. I'd say this about most fashion companies. Fashion companies are good at making fashion products. Everything else is like, oh wait, this is different. Like, how are we gonna fit this in? And that includes e-commerce, right? So as we've developed e-commerce, it's not like we've learned a lot of it from scratch, but with so much of this stuff, especially at the beginning, it took a lot of effort. We're like, oh, we got to figure out a new thing. How are we going to do this? Who's the right partner? Let's interview a ton of people and get this to work. So, the beauty of a partner like BigCommerce is that, okay, so we have one main platform, and if we want to get into segmentation, loyalty, whatever it is, it's not like we're necessarily doing all that legwork on our own to figure out who the best partners are. They have a partners team that does all of this work for us. They tell us, okay, we have a really easy plug and play partnership with them. Here's the game plan. And so that has really helped us. One main partner that does a lot of legwork to figure out all the ancillary partners has been really productive and efficient for us.
In that vein, then, you mentioned you're spread thin. You don't have the staff and the resources to go look at all these other resources that might exist. Is there any examples of platform improvements, maybe specifically business benefits that you've seen that you would cite back to your work with BigCommerce?
Yeah, sure. We've got a number of great partnerships through them. I'd say, Yachtpo for product reviews. That's been a really good one. We use a charitable widget called Shopping Gives, which has been really helpful for us. I told you about the importance to our customers of us telling our story and our customers feeling more connected to the people and the company behind our products. We use this widget called Shopping Gives, where anybody who checks out on Natori.com, they can just click a button, and from that button, we'll donate on our behalf. We'll donate a certain percentage of their order to to a charity of their choice. We always feature, when they do that, we have 3 charities of our choice. So they say, our customers know these are the charities that are important to Natori. They can choose one of those. Or if a customer has a charity that they really care about, they can just choose that, and our donation will go to that charity. So, there have been a lot of, a number of integrations. We have, my registry as well in terms of product registry. There are just a number where it's helped us really grow and have like a multifaceted site with a lot of great functionality that would have been really difficult to achieve if we didn't have a partner helping sort of secure, partners in these categories.
So first, that's a cool integration, and also kudos to you and your team for the charitable work that you're doing. You also spoke here at the show about embracing a hybrid retail strategy. So I'm curious, what does that mean for the Natori Company? Tell us a little bit about what hybrid retail means to you and your business, and how do you kind of manifest that in operations and a day-to-day business?
Sure. All these terms are kind of funny, but it's true. So, I think about how much COVID has changed the game plan for us. So, we launched Natori.com pretty early in 2008. And I think every year we tried to be ahead of the game. Like, we knew e-commerce was going to grow a good amount every year. We knew our high-end wholesale business, if we could keep that kind of steady, that would be good. And we felt like we were kind of ahead of the game in terms of planning for both trends. COVID sent our e-com growth rate just totally through the roof. It sent our wholesale business, obviously, to zero, essentially. And it since has come back, but at the end of the day, whereas going into COVID, we were still a wholesale company with an important e-commerce arm, but still a substantial minority of the business. Now, it's really like we think of both units. We don't think of them, they're separate units, but we really think of them kind of equally as important in terms of like the future of the company. So our company looks very different than it did before COVID, where now, it's kind of like one team, one dream, and we're all doing what we can to support, the business holistically.
So that's a good segue, Ken, into my final question in terms of looking ahead. Obviously, this, now that the e-com business, the D2C business is almost on par, kind of an equal arm compared to the wholesale business. Talk about the kind of growth opportunities that might present themselves. We're looking, we're here at NRF and the start of a new year. Where's your attention focused? Maybe it's marketing that kind of getting more of the word out about getting the direct consumer business, more traffic. So investments there and that. It could be other areas, technology investments, could be logistics. Tell us a little bit where your attention's focused here as we get further into 2022.
Sure. So I'll go two different places. One not exciting, the other maybe more exciting. So what's going on in terms of logistics and the supply chain, it was, as you know, a total hot mess at the end of 2021. I feel like it's people think it's kind of done and in the past and everything's going to be hunky-dory in a couple months. I don't believe that. I actually think these logistical supply chain issues are going to stay and may even get worse. We're seeing things that we didn't see last year, including fabric lead times taking a lot longer than they did before. That's somewhat of a newish problem. So I have I've always been involved in a lot of parts of the business, but I've been spending even more time on kind of like our logistics and supply chain just to provide more support because, you have to kind of outperform there in what's a very, very challenging space. The other area, which is exciting for us, is new product categories. So ironically, one of the benefits to us from COVID is that we have a number of great partners in different categories reach out to us being like, you know what, who knows what this retail landscape's going to work like, but we want to work with an independent fashion brand where the owners operators are really involved. Like, that's what we want. And we're like, well, yeah, I guess we are kind of unique because, we're very proud to be independent. My mother and I both very involved in everything, and that's what people want. So we, just after COVID, in fall of 2021, we launched 4 new categories with 4 great partners. We're in men's loungewear now, shoes, medical scrubs, and even dog apparel. We actually just signed another license. We're going to be doing Natori Children's, and that'll be launching either later in 22 or early 2023. And, we love working with best-in-class partners who can take us to new categories that make sense for the brand. So I'm certainly looking for more of those as well.
I'm actually going to have one more follow-up because I think it's an interesting question. You talked about kind of your forecasting the persistence of the supply chain challenges that exist, especially in your categories, fashion categories. Also interested in kind of, the cost of goods and inflation and what that means for your business and how that may impact pricing and how you kind of handle inflation.
Sure. I've been screaming about inflation for the last year and a half. A lot of my friends from business school in the investment world, I'm like, guys, this is going to happen. And obviously it's here. So is it good? No. Obviously there are a lot of issues in terms of, we're all facing rising costs and in a business model that's not the best in the world. So that's not good. I will say this, though, to the degree retailers now expect price increases from the brand, that all kind of helps us reset things, right? Like, we've had slowly increasing costs for a decade now, and it's still been very difficult for us to raise wholesale prices because, there are a million brands trying to get into a small number of stores. So we've just been seeing kind of like our margins erode. And now with this whole new, now inflation's here, it gives more of an opportunity to reset things. Net, is that going to be better? I'm not sure. Could be worse. Could be better. I don't know. We'll see. But at the very least, stores now understand that prices have to go up, which puts us to some degree, if you want to look at it with rose-colored glasses, in a better position than pre-COVID, where prices were slowly inching up and the stores didn't want to hear anything about wholesale prices going up. So we'll see how it plays out. But it's not 100% negative. So,
well, it's great. I want to take the opportunity to thank Ken Natori, the president of the Natori Company, for joining us on today's episode of Total Retail Talks, which we're recording here at the NRF Big Show in New York. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for listening. For more information on this podcast, please check out our podcast channel page at mytotalretail.com/podcasts for show notes. Total Retail Talks is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. Make sure to subscribe on our podcast channel page as well. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a few moments to rate and review this podcast. Thanks, and until next time, this has been Total Retail Talk.